This week, preserving people during life and after death. The digital legacy that you leave behind. And lots of freezers. The streets of San Francisco. Mecca for technology innovators and aficionados. A destination where the cult of geek reigns supreme. Everyone's got that billion-dollar idea here, and everyone wants to save the world. The ethos, nothing is impossible, runs through the veins and the Twitter feeds of every 20-something Zuckerberg wannabe. Now, Silicon Valley is taking on life's biggest challenge: death.
Dave Lee has been looking at how Silicon Valley is trying to help us all live longer.
This will be my last meal for 36 hours. Like a growing number of people in Silicon Valley, I'm about to try fasting, something some here believe could contribute to extending our lifespan.
My advice to you, just sleep in really late so you don't have to deal with it.
Kristen Brown is a biotechnology journalist. She tells me living longer is becoming something of an obsession for many techies.
We do tend to see people not just thinking of the body as a machine, but talking about it metaphorically as a machine.
Are they actually making any progress?
It's growing so quickly right now. I mean, we understand so much more this year than we did last year even. But the other thing about science is the more questions you answer, the more questions there are.
The following morning, my first stop after a skipped breakfast was Jeffrey Wu. He's chief executive of a firm called Human. It promotes fasting as a way to boost productivity and increase our health span, that is, the number of years you are fully able before the troubles of old age. Jeffrey promotes the 36-hour fast that I'm on, and his company sells products they claim will boost your body's reaction to fasting.
So when you're extending beyond a 24-hour fast, you're dipping into a metabolic state called ketosis, which converts your stored body fat into a really efficient source of energy called ketone bodies. As one gets better at being in ketosis, cognitive clarity and what ends up being a productivity boost.
To test it, we measured the ketone level in my body with a simple blood test. My ketone levels were low, as could be expected, but next I drank one of Human's ketone-producing products.
You can expect to see within 15 minutes equivalent to 5-7 days worth of fasting level of ketones in your system.
The science behind what benefits can be had isn't exactly watertight. One study suggested one of Human's other products may not have any greater effect than a cup of coffee. The moment of truth for me came around 30 minutes later.
Wow.
2.2.
Okay.
So it's essentially equivalent to having fasted for 3-4 days in 30 minutes.
The obsession with rejuvenation and longevity here has even been satirized on HBO's Silicon Valley.
He's my transfusion associate.
Like all great comedy, it's funny because it's true.
One incredible idea being tested here can be traced back to this man, Paul Burt. In the mid-1800s, he claimed that if you took an old mouse and literally stitched it together with a young mouse, the old mouse would become more agile, have a better memory, and also heal more quickly once it had the young blood flowing through its veins. Now, of course, we can't start stitching humans together, but there is a startup that thinks it can do the next best thing.
Alkahest is a California-based startup that believes weekly injections of blood plasma from young people could fight the onset of Alzheimer's.
We treated these patients once a week for 4 weeks with 1 unit of plasma. And we found that the treatment was safe. And very importantly, although it was a short study to see learning and memory improvements, but it was good enough to see some near-term improvements.
The team said it found those treated were more capable of basic daily tasks and more aware of their surroundings. Encouraging, but far from conclusive. So far, it's only been proven that this technique works with mice, but it's hoped that extensive human studies might help this team unlock the secret to easily rejuvenating humans.
Ultimately, we might be able to identify agents that could be administered orally.
To gather this data, they have set up a partnership to get the blood plasma from Grifols, a major pharmaceutical firm based in Spain. People are being paid to give up their young blood.
Well, that's a fascinating ethical question. I actually think that there is a large pool of donors currently, which is increasing, and I think there is an increasing recognition how valuable plasma proteins are.
To get some answers on whether or not these fantastical ideas could actually work, I went to visit one of the world's foremost experts on aging.
Fasting elicits a response in your body that triggers a protection against many of the diseases that are associated with aging. And so there's growing realization that multiple forms of fasting might actually be beneficial in the long term.
One of the more perhaps outrageous ideas is that you can transfer young blood into an older person and that will rejuvenate and slow the aging process. Is that true?
First, let's talk about the science in mice. It is actually amazing work. The science is really strong. Now, taking this and bringing it to humans is a completely different story. So the idea, for example, that one would take human plasma or human plasma product and give it to humans to prevent aging is, in my opinion, lunacy.
Finally, my 36 hours were up.
I'm not sure it's worth it. The lows I had last night and this morning were awful, and to do that regularly, I think, might lead to a longer life, but it certainly wouldn't be a happier one. What could be really interesting, though, is if these companies can recreate the positive effects of fasting without the hard work of having to go without food for such a long period of time. But for now, I think I'm going to choose breakfast.
That was Dave Lee. And while the quest for a longer life might take a little while longer, technology has been looking at other ways to help us live on through avatars. The University of Southern California has been creating virtual versions of Holocaust survivors for the past few years, preserving their memories and their experiences for future generations. Survivors are interviewed at length inside a special light stage used by Hollywood to capture them in 360 degrees. Using voice recognition and machine learning, anyone can interact with these digital holograms at special exhibit sites.
Did any of your family members survive?
One aunt, that was my dad's sister that survived. So from the immediate extended family, there were 3 of us that survived.
I went along for a scan myself. Now the rig admittedly looks rather makeshift, with lots of low-cost cameras capturing me from different angles. By scanning some extreme facial expressions, most mouth movements and emotions can also be simulated by merging between them.
Right now we can capture ourselves as we are today. Perhaps there are people in our lives that are going to get older and the next generation won't see them anymore. Can I capture grandma and grandpa? Can I capture enough of what they look like, how they move, and even what they think to some extent? We combine that with some kind of artificial intelligence where it would be possible to actually have an interaction with a person who's not alive anymore.
Here in the UK, the Forever Project is also working on a similar idea at the National Holocaust Centre and Museum, virtually preserving survivor experiences. But a digital legacy isn't just for people like these. Most of us will leave a will regarding our possessions or instructions for our funeral arrangements, but now emphasis is also being placed on our digital footprint too. I spoke to Facebook's head of global policy, Monica Bickett, about our post-mortem account options.
This is such an incredibly sensitive subject that for Facebook, I would imagine it's an impossible task to get it right.
It's certainly a very difficult area for us. Losing people is so hard, and at Facebook we want to make sure that we are respecting that person's life and respecting the choices that person made. But we also want to make sure we're making this process as easy as possible for the family members that are going through it. And actually, it's sometimes hard for us to satisfy both of those.
So I would imagine a lot of people do not tell you, Facebook, what they want to happen to their account after their death. So how do you know what to do?
That's right, a lot of people don't. And I want to be clear that there is a way to tell Facebook what you would like to happen to your account after you pass away. We call it our legacy contact. You can actually designate somebody that can look after your account after you're gone. And basically this gives the person, you can choose what authority you want the person to have, but this gives the person the choice to, say, change your profile photo or add friends or put a post at the top of your profile. They do not become you. They cannot control every feature of the account. They can take some actions. They can choose to delete the account, but they do not have the ultimate control to look at your private messages.
Family and friends have particular feelings about what happens to someone's memories when they're gone. They don't always agree. How do you even begin to settle those disputes?
We will delete the profile if one person asks for it. Now, having gone through this myself, I lost my husband a little more than a year ago, and my experience was that it was very powerful for me and very comforting for me to be able to look at things that he had written, to see photos that he had posted. It made me feel like I could still connect with him and that he still was a very active presence in my life.
I wonder whether you had any advice to people watching this on, how to go forward if they experience something similar.
I think the important thing is have the conversations now and talk about how you would want to treat your digital legacy, including what do you want to happen to your online presence, your Facebook account, your other accounts, and what is your plan for making sure that your estate, all the practical things that we don't like to think about very much in our daily lives, are taken care of so that your loved ones don't have to go through that.
Welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that the head of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, said the world is running out of computing capacity and that quantum is the only way forward. A new degree in flying car engineering was announced at an e-learning school in Silicon Valley. And Facebook invented a new unit of time called a flick. It's designed to help video editors and people working in visual effects. The new unit lasts longer than a nanosecond, but is shorter than a microsecond. And Sky decided to take on the likes of Amazon and Netflix, launching its new Now TV stick. It also announced that it's goodbye to the old Sky satellite dishes, as all its services go online from 2019. Also this week, General Motors became the first self-driving car manufacturer to be sued over an accident. Its Chevrolet Bolt hit a motorcyclist back in December. Meanwhile, Tesla had its own autopilot problems when a Model S ploughed into a fire truck. The race to put the first privately funded spacecraft on the moon is over, and not with a rocket launch, but with a tweet and a statement. The Google Lunar X Prize offered a $20 million prize fund to the first team to land on the moon by March. And finally, a robot working in a supermarket has been fired after just 1 week for scaring customers away. Fabio was an experiment to see whether robots would interact well with shoppers, but it turns out its instructions, such as the beer is in the alcohol aisle, infuriated people rather than helping them. The job market's tough out there.
Unexpected items lagging out. Please remove item before continuing.
Oh, a familiar phrase, but as we've seen this week, one that we may not need to hear much longer. Amazon Go's cashierless Seattle store finally launched on Monday. You can check in with your phone, cameras and sensors will track what you pick up, and your Amazon account will be instantly charged. They aren't the only big players trying to cut supermarket queues, though. Big companies like IBM and Accenture have been trying to crack the cashierless supermarket model for some time. Well, it's time for a rather unconventional shopping experience. The first thing I'm going to do is get my bag out. I visited this North London convenience store where IBM have been putting their prototype instant checkout to the test.
Because when it comes to actually checking out, the RFID tags that sit on all the products will be instantly scanned in one go. You can just put everything in here straight away, although it does sort of feel wrong. And something sweet. So I have everything I need in my shopping bag, but I can't leave just yet. In fact, this is the fun bit. It's time for the instant checkout. I pop down my bag full of items, and immediately what's in that bag seamlessly comes up on the screen. If you're concerned this could make things too easy for shoplifters though, because obviously it does look like you've legitimately paid, then fear not, there is something to overcome that. RFID readers can be placed right by the doors, so if anybody does try to leave with something that hasn't been scanned, the alarm will go off.
For customers who are happy to share their habits and behaviour, artificial intelligence will come into play to combine that information with data on their surroundings.
Weather and traffic for a convenience store like this will drastically change what people are going to come in and buy, how many people come in and when. Being able to use all of those mass volumes of data, do predictive analytics, all of that merged together means that we're going to be able to tell the retailer what to keep in stock and when.
And that is a real driver behind all this, to understand our shopping habits from the moment we enter a shop until we leave. Accenture has kitted out this Milan store, which they've dubbed the supermarket of the future. It features e-ink display price tags and a lot of screens. Hidden behind them are Connect depth sensing cameras, collecting data on customers' movements and interactions with products. The designers of the space hope that as well as providing insight to the retailer, the data collection will better the overall shopping experience.
A lot of information that are available regarding food does not appear anywhere when you get into the supermarket. So all this data availability does not show up. So we wanted to give those kind of information back to the customer.
But whilst most of us are still actually engaging with humans or the self-service aisle, it seems that the cashierless shop could be coming to a place near you fairly soon.
That was Lara. Now, we've been looking at various ways to try and extend human life, possibly indefinitely, but the researchers can't do it yet. And so until they can, there are those who are offering to put your life on pause. Mark Chislak has been to Arizona to meet the Self-Preservation Society.
Death and taxes, as the saying goes, are the two things that none of us can avoid. But what about if there was a workaround for death, some way of extending our physical existence on this planet? Alcor was founded in 1972 in order to preserve people at the point of death, freeze them, and then when technology is sufficiently advanced, revive them in the future. A process it calls cryonics.
This is kind of interesting infographic on the history of cryonics, which starts actually as far back as 1773, if you like, where Benjamin Franklin kind of thought about the future of America and speculated that maybe he could be pickled in a vat of Madeira with his best friends to see how the country came out.
What goes on in this space here? I'm assuming this simulates what the procedure that you would normally perform when somebody dies.
Exactly. So we have to wait for legal death to be declared. At that point, we move the patient from the bed to the ice bath. We're going to cover them with ice. At the same time, even though they've been called legally dead, we're going to restart all kinds of things. We're going to use a respirator to take over the breathing. We're going to use this mechanical CPR device. And the reason we're doing that is that we want to administer a whole series of different medications to protect the cells.
So this is even though the patient himself is dead at this point?
Right. It's very much like when you're donating an organ. Even though the person has been declared dead, that doesn't mean all the cells are suddenly dead.
Patients are effectively pumped full of antifreeze to protect their tissue from the freezing process which comes later. It costs up to $200,000 to preserve a full body and $60,000 if somebody just wants their head preserved.
So this is our operating room. The patient will be put on this special operating table. It's basically designed to shape the patient for long-term storage. We don't want someone at very low temperature with their arms sticking out. They're very hard to fit into the capsules.
This here as well, this is this just for heads?
So usually we'll begin on the operating table over there, and then we'll do a neuroseparation, a few vertebrae down, and then place the patient's cephalon, which is the brain plus the brain plus the skull, upside down in the neuro ring. But essentially it's the same process. We're going to remove the blood and other fluids from the brain and cryoprotect them against ice formation.
Why would people want their head separated from their body?
I'm not going to come back just as a head. I'm going to get a new body. And my view is that unless I die early in an accident, then maybe I'm 95, 100 years old if I'm lucky, my body's going to be in lousy shape anyway, and the whole thing's going to have to be regenerated. Why go to all the extra cost of storing my whole body, which is 10 times the volume of just my head?
The corridors here are lined with photos of people who are already frozen in Alcor's storage facility.
Well, this is the patient care bay. This is where we store all our patients, currently 152.
These are all of your patients?
Yes, all of our patients here. Actually, about 2/3 of them are neuro patients. So
that means they're just heads?
Yeah. So although about half our members, living members, are whole body, we actually have more neuro patients here. So this can actually contain 4 whole body patients.
Alcor doesn't have any legal obligation to the people stored here, as they've technically donated their bodies to science. What happens if you have a power cut, for instance?
Well, we don't need electricity for this. These are passive vessels. They're just gigantic, very expensive thermos flasks. And you don't plug your thermos flask into electricity. We just use the liquid nitrogen, which boils off at minus 320 to maintain that temperature.
Alcor says it's a non-profit making organisation and that it has 1,150 people signed up for its services, including Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel. But what motivates ordinary people to shell out up to 200 grand for cryogenic preservation? Back in the UK, Derek Watkinson has signed himself and his family up for just that via a different outfit called the Cryonics Institute.
I imagine being on my deathbed, dying and then immediately waking up. If it's going to work, I'm going to wake up straight away, because the passage of time won't mean anything because I'm dead. So I will wake up immediately, and hopefully I'll be able to remember things. Yeah, my memory will be intact, hopefully, who I am.
Your whole family is going to be preserved as well?
Yeah, luckily my wife and daughter are for the idea, and they are signed up members of Cryonics Institute.
But is this all too good to be true? We spoke to a neuroscientist who has serious misgivings about the basic foundations of cryonics.
You really can't afford to freeze biological tissue until it's been adequately protected, but unless you take it down to those low temperatures for protection quite quickly, it will continue to decompose. And my problem with the cryonics dream, the wishful thinking contracts that are sold, is that they haven't resolved that conflict. There's no evidence that they can get the antifreeze into all those micro nooks and crannies in the brain and satisfactorily protect it.
We put this to Alcor, who provided a detailed response.
The objective of cryonics is simply to preserve as much brain information as possible for distant future technology to analyse and repair at the molecular level. There is no pretense that people cryopreserved today can be recovered by any simple means.
So is this the ultimate insurance policy then?
Yeah, but I've not lost anything. A bit of money. What's money?
That was Mark, and that's it from San Francisco for now. Don't forget, there's loads of extra stuff from us on Twitter at BBC Click and on Facebook too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.